Good evening, pubbers. How are you all doing? How was your week? If you've never been here before, if you don't know what this is the Sunday Pub, which is a live stream, casual, friendly hangout that I run every week on Sunday, of course. And anyone is welcome to join me on the screen, whether you have your own channel or not. You just need to be on the Fireside Discord, link in the description, where I post a link for people to join who want to join. How is everyone doing? Who is here? Some of the regulars, no doubt. Thornall, yes. Thornall's here pretty much every week, just like me. You have not missed anything, Thornall. I just went through the typical intro stuff. Evie is here. One of my favorite booktube people. Good to see you, Evie. Just discovered yesterday that Evie and I are, well, no, Evie has read and I am reading something that we both really enjoyed. Get into that a bit later. The big news this week was StreamYard decided to more than double its pricing, which was a nasty surprise. And all of us booktubers are scrambling to find alternatives. Evie was doing tests yesterday of different streaming software things. And probably next week I'll be doing this on Restream. It looks like Restream may be, for our needs, one of the best alternatives. That's right. Evie is reading, and I have read Parfum. I read it a long time ago, a really long time ago, like 20 years ago or something. I don't remember when it came out, but I read it a long time ago, and I remember it being very good. Hello, Jeroen. Good evening, Ryan. Yep, usual suspects. Good to see you all. And yes, I was just talking about the StreamYard price increase situation. This is typical internet. You when you make a thing which runs in the internet, you get a lot of people who have a lot of money to invest in it and give you a lot of money so that you don't actually have to charge for it, or you don't have to charge much. This gives you a very large audience, user base. And when you have a really large user base, it looks like something someone else might want to have, so they buy it. But of course, once they've spent a lot of money on it, they want to earn a lot of money with it, so they increase all the prices. And that's what's happened here. StreamYard got bought a couple months ago. I forget, something Spoon was the name of the company that bought them. I forget what they're called. And that company is famous actually for buying and then over doubling the prices of things. They also did the same thing with Evernote when they bought it. So yeah, StreamYard, when I originally joined it, I think had a $10 a month cheapest paid tier, and now they're putting it up to $45. Whereas a couple of weeks ago or a week ago, it was 25 or 20. So yeah, 1985 Parfum. Yeah, so I read it. I read it quite a long time ago. I think I was still in University. So it was close-ish to the time it came out. Hi, Osa. Hi, Colton. Good to see you all. Yes, Thornall, that book is older than the European Union. I remember when, strangely, I'd only been in Germany for a few years when the money changed. When we lost the Deutschmark and got the Euro. So yes, that was definitely well after 1985. Although the EU was already around at that point. What is everybody reading? I am reading, I mentioned it slightly earlier, Eyes of the Void. I talked about it last week, although last week was I already reading this one? I don't remember. I think I was reading the first one. This is book 2 of the Final Architecture trilogy by Mr. Tchaikovsky, Mr. Remarkable Eyebrows himself. And it's really good. I am so enjoying this. Daniel is older than the European Union. I am well older than the European Union. Yes. Thornall's reading Empire of the Damned. Empire of the Umpire. Is that I guess that's the second Empire of the Umpire. Umpire of the Empire. Whatever. Jerome is reading Glenn Cook's Shadow Games. Yeah, Jerome's been burning through the Glenn Cook Black Company books. Hello, Alicia.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
All good. Yep,
Okay.
it's working. How you doing?
It's always like hit or miss to see if StreamYard wants to let me use my audio.
Oh. Yep. Well, we can see how it is with other services as of next week.
Yes.
StreamYard
I'm trying.
is over for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm using it next week or this week technically, and then I'm done.
Yeah, exactly. This is I mean, I'm on a paid plan and I've already paid for a month. So
yeah. I'm using it until it's done.
Yeah, basically. Exactly. So Paul Ramberg, I think this is maybe the first time I've seen you here, Paul. Welcome. Just picked up Shards of Earth. If you just picked up Shards of Earth because of my recommendation, then I assume you've been here before, but I don't remember you speaking up before. Shards of Earth is the first of these. This trilogy starts with Shards of Earth, and then it's Eyes of the Void, and then it's Lords of Uncreation, I think.
That's Tchaikovsky, right?
It's Tchaikovsky, yeah. It's a trilogy called The Final Architecture, and it's really good. I am really enjoying it.
I've only read Guns of the Dawn by him, the standalone.
I also have that sitting here.
It's so good. It's my favorite.
I started it because I read the first Final Architecture book.
Mm-hmm.
I ordered the other two, and my timing was off, so the other two didn't arrive before I finished the first one.
Okay.
So I had like a day in between, and I was like, man, I really want to keep going, so I'll just pick up Guns of the Dawn because I have it here.
So good.
I only read like 2 chapters of it, and it's a good start.
Yeah.
It's a good start. Yeah. Ursa finished Stonewielder. It was really good. I believe it. Hey, Mattia. Ships of Destiny, Brian. Welcome to, well, not welcome to. You've already, it's almost welcome out of. But the Life Ship trilogy is pretty kick-ass. 100 pages left in Memories of Ice. Yeah. Who else was reading Memories of Ice? Was it Dan or Josh? I can't remember. Hello, Raf.
Hello. I hope you can hear me.
We can.
That is wonderful. How are you guys doing?
Yes.
Pretty good. How you doing?
I'm Doing okay. Somewhat tired, but it is what it is.
All
I
right.
brought refreshments though, so I guess
Of course you did. Plop.
things will get better.
Yeah.
It's too
Cheers,
early
everybody.
here for that, but I will enjoy through you.
I don't know how early it is for you.
It's 2 p.m. here.
Well, I would argue that is totally fine for drinking on a Sunday.
In Germany on a Sunday, that is definitely not too early for a beer. I have often met my friends in a beer garden at 2 or earlier. So, yeah.
I mean, it is Germany. That's like
exactly.
I know people who go for lunch, like while working, go for lunch and have a beer at lunch
and have a beer. Yeah,
work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Here it's tailgating season, so everybody starts drinking at 9 a.m. I'm not part of that group of people.
You're not a tailgater.
Well, I mean, here it's like the end of festival season, and summer festival season is exactly that, where you start drinking at like, I don't know, 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. and then
I'm too old for that
drinking
anymore.
at like 4 a.m. and like have like 3 hours of sleep, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm
way too old for that.
I can't do it. I used to. I can't do it anymore.
I did a lot of that in my 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
But yeah, after a while, somebody invited me to go to a festival, and I thought about it, and I was like, wow, okay, this is the first time that I thought, no, that sounds like a pain in the ass. Instead of, wow, that sounds great.
I was like positively surprised by how well I could do it this year, like during summer festival season. I was surprised that I could still do it in ridiculous amounts, but I think it's partly the fact that I've been, going to the gym like 5 days per week since like January. So I am
being
physically
that healthy,
fit in a way.
Yeah, being that healthy and fit really does help.
Yeah, who would have thought?
Anymore.
I don't have the iron gut that I used to anymore.
Oh, my gut's okay, but I would just be really tired and cranky halfway through the first day. So
it's not worth the hangover for me anymore.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
The hangover lasts longer than the enjoyment of drinking.
I just don't drink that much anymore. I drink extremely rarely unless I'm going out with a friend. Like, I never drink at home anymore. And I'm not out with friends every night.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So what are people reading? People are reading Exordia by Seth Dickinson. Joanna is reading Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. I remember seeing that on the Discords.
Prepare with tissues.
Yeah,
I still have to read Exordia. I bought it a couple of months ago, and it's been sitting on my phone since then, and I've always found something else to read instead. So I'm woefully behind on Exordia, but I think it's something that I might enjoy. I mean, that's why I bought it, but
Thornell asks if I'm up to date with Sun Eater. Yes, I am. I had a earlier this year. I had a Sun Eater binge mood, and I basically just read nothing but Sun Eater until I finished all of them. So I am up to date. Look who it is.
Hi.
A wild Eevee has appeared with a George in the background.
Indeed.
Fluffy butt.
Indeed.
I've been reading way too much Ian MacDonald. Well, there's never too much Ian MacDonald, but I've been reading a lot of Ian MacDonald over the last weeks, and I reread again Scissors Cut Paper Wrap Stone earlier today because I wanted to record the video, and then I was too tired to actually make it through the video, so I had to cancel that halfway through and decide to record it again when I'm, more awake and stuff.
Whenever I hear something like that, it always makes me think rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock.
Yeah.
For those of you who know the Big Bang Theory.
Yeah. Although, Matt, you might actually kind of enjoy Scissors Cut Paper Wrap Stone, because it's the main story is it's cyberpunk or like post-cyberpunk set in Japan, and it's about a pilgrimage, like a Buddhist pilgrimage to like 88 temples, and I've forgotten the name of the pilgrimage, but it's about that specific pilgrimage and two people doing that.
Okay.
And then stuff happens.
Sounds interesting.
So there's a lot of like very specific Japanese Buddhist stuff kind of built into the narrative in a lot of ways.
Zen, right? Okay, interesting.
And since I know you're a
Mattia,
Buddhist, you might enjoy that.
yeah, I'm always interested to see what different authors do with Buddhism in their stories when there's anything particular in there. Mattia, StreamYard, after the price increase, their cheapest tier is $45 a month.
That's way too much.
Which is way too much. All of their competitors have like 16 a month, 19 a month, 25 a month, and they're at 45 a month now. So I just hope when they did their calculations in Excel, that they put in 50% of their customers leaving. Because
have you actually paid for? Do you have the paid version or just the unpaid one? Okay.
I have the paid one, and they more than doubled the price.
See, I never went for the paid one. I really want to leave the whole StreamYard thing for streaming. I want to move over to OBS and just like
do it straight from your machine.
Yes, because there's something really annoying about StreamYard. In like when you look at their website, the way they're building it feels like it's specifically targeted to multi-level marketing people in a lot of ways.
And I think that's a lot of the strategy of the price increase.
Yes.
Is they're aiming to focus on people who are doing this to make money. And not people
especially
like us.
through the whole like MLM kind of thing, and this is why they have like Facebook live streams and stuff, which is where stay-at-home moms are trying to sell LuLaRoe leggings or whatever it is people are selling these days on multi-level marketing, and that's predatory in a lot of ways, and I don't like that approach. So I'm trying to move away from it and get like OBS set up in a way that works for me, so I can use some proper open source software that is done by people that actually care about the product and don't necessarily care about exploiting people that are already downtrodden in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Evie, who is now here, said she's starting Beloved by Toni Morrison. About to, but focusing on Perfume, the story of a murderer by Patrick Suskind.
I hate that book.
Oh well, I'm already loving it, so I can't. I gotta.
I loved it as well.
I think the reason is that I had to read it in school, which is always a bad thing for any kind of book.
Yeah,
that's true. I read it well after school.
Jerome, I actually saw the film obviously first, and if I watched it now, it's probably not going to be that great, but I fell in love with Ben Whishaw as an actor, and like whatever critiques you can have of that film, Ben Whishaw carries that film entirely, and it's wonderful. So it took me, I loved that movie so much that it's taken me over 10 years to finally read this book. So
I think like
Paul confirms that he lurks all the time, just never really says much. That's what
I haven't watched the film, but what I felt when I was reading the book, I felt like it was deliberately trying to do things that you could only do in books and not do in film, whether it is about the level of like violence and whatnot that is happening later on in the thing, or other aspects like the whole thing about smell and so forth. It was deliberately trying to do something that books could do and that film can't do, which kind of makes sense when you realize that the author was mostly writing scripts for like German television before that, and he's deliberately trying to do something unfilmable. So I'm wary of like how a movie adaptation of that thing actually works, because you have to cut out a lot of things that are sort of core to the book, I think, to make it work as a movie.
Yeah, I mean, again,
I think I saw the movie a long time ago, but I don't remember it.
Yeah, I mean, again, take this because it's been over 10 years since I've seen the movie. I should probably watch it again. But I remember I think Tom Twyker as the director did a really good job of, now that I've started the book, of evoking the same sensory experience of what Susskind did through words, and Tom Twyker does it through the visual medium. I think he really he translated that very well. So
Colton is enjoying Memories of Ice. Yeah, can't blame you. Going straight into House of Chains. Yeah, no, Memories of Ice is relatively consistently, the one I say is my favorite. It changes all the time when I think about the series, and a lot of people have very different opinions about things. But in general, I think a lot of people would say that Memories of Ice is one of their favorites. Yeah. Hello, Rogue. What's crack? Reading Fool's Assassin and Hooked. Started last night. Already a third of the way through. Wow. Okay, so you didn't sleep much yet.
Romance? It's a dark romance retelling of Peter Pan.
Fool's Assassin? Wait, what?
No, Hooked.
Oh, yeah.
Also, yes, you should read Ian MacDonald. Everyone should read Ian MacDonald. He's probably BookTube's most underrated science fiction author, which is really interesting. I've been going back through his works and doing videos on like all the ones that I own in publication order now, and they are probably the worst performing videos I've ever made, which is saying a lot. And that's interesting because the man has won like 3 British Science Fiction and Fantasy Awards, and
Ian
and
MacDonald's
Philip K.
big.
Dick Award, and all kinds of other awards. But no one reads them, which is sad.
Yeah. Yeah. Joanna says, still have free StreamYard. Yeah, but there's also free Restream and free lots of other things. And I'd rather, if I'm going to go with the free version, I think I'd rather go with a company that isn't more than doubling their prices.
Yeah.
I'd rather just get the hell out and find something else. Restream, I mean, Evie did a trial stream yesterday with Restream, and the free version actually looks pretty good. I mean, one of the nice things is they have the most subtle watermark logo of any free version streaming thing that I've seen.
Unlike the EV Mux one, which is
the EV Mux one is animated. It's like this ball that flies in the corner, and it's kind of annoying.
I lose my mind.
Yeah, yeah. No, EV Mux, you would kind of have to go for at least the first paid tier, but Restream actually looks pretty good. If you don't want to set up your own OBS, then the free version of Restream looks pretty good. The paid version gives you some stuff that is also good. But because I'm a designer, it kind of annoys me when something I'm doing regularly, like the pub, is branded with somebody else's stuff.
Yes.
And I think I'll try. I think next pub I'll already try Restream free and see how I get on with it. And after that, I'll probably then maybe get their cheapest version, and see what I think of that. But yeah, also has read.
Jeroen, I'm so happy you finally got that book, man. Typically, Jeroen ordered Desolation Road when I talked about it, and then the book got mislaid, and it's a long saga of that one Desolation Road copy making it like 5 times through the Low Countries, I guess.
I was going to say it was on the Desolation Road.
Yeah. I think you might actually enjoy Desolation Road.
They took that maybe as the address.
Yeah.
They sent it to Desolation Road.
Yeah, I think you might actually enjoy Desolation Road, Evie. It's a very weird thing. It's basically 100 Years of Solitude, but on Mars.
Stop recommending me books. I still haven't read the other recommendations you gave me.
Hi, Aaron.
You are very vocal about telling me what kind of books I should read.
Listen,
so
one, and it's Spear Cuts Through Water. And I do it.
So, yeah, but Spear Cuts Through Water was okay. Yeah, I read it like months ago.
Tweaking out. It's good. What is Desolation Road? Or who? Or it's hard. Who writes?
Ian MacDonald's Desolation Road. It's his debut novel, and it's 100 Years of Solitude on Mars doing weird stuff.
Yeah, it does sound interesting. 100 Years of Solitude was definitely an interesting book.
I loved it. I read it
So
a
did
couple
I.
of weeks ago. I really enjoyed it.
I mean, I haven't. I read it like 2 decades ago, I think, but I remember I have positive memories of it. Daniel has been slowly rereading the first Mistborn book. Just to actually get some use out of the expensive special editions on the shelf. Yeah, I know the feeling. I've been looking at my my Folio Society Dune and Dune Messiah, and probably I'll get Children of Dune now that they've actually done it. And also looking at those and thinking, yeah, maybe I should.
But
Maybe I
is
should
that the
reread.
thing? Like, since you are collecting like those like collector's editions and whatnot, I don't know. Like, if I were doing that and I already knew the book, which is obviously the case with you, is like I would probably just go and continue rereading my broken up, like brutalized
Yeah.
paperback copy because the other one is just too, beautiful to put through like all the things that like a book that I would read on, on commute or whatever would like have to go through. So I'm like,
Yeah, I mean, certainly at the moment, just because of the way my life is,
yeah,
I read almost exclusively at home. So I would not take one of those. I would not throw one of those in my bag and take it on a
yeah.
commute.
I mean, they're
know,
probably
or
too heavy and too bulky anyway to do that.
yeah, they're. I mean, they're not small hardbacks, so
Yeah.
yeah, they're a bit chunky, and yeah, you don't want to be sitting at lunch splashing food on them or something like that. I wouldn't be doing that. But like I said, I only read at home. Generally at the moment because I'm working from home and all that stuff.
Mm.
But I still do look at them and think they're too pretty to handle. And then
Yeah.
on the other side, I look at them and I think that's really stupid. Like if I'm just
I mean, you
reading
bought them for a reason, right?
exactly. I mean, I also have like 2 other complete editions of all the Dune books in paperback, which I could be reading if I want to just read. But I like the visual experience of those books because the covers are beautiful. They have illustrations. The typesetting is gorgeous. And also just the tactile sensation of them. They have nice linen covers and the paper's really nicely done. And, handling them actually is also a source of enjoyment. So,
I mean,
yeah.
I only have like printed books, but like almost all my printed books are role-playing game books, and some of those are also like very special editions. I have like I think like my prized possession is the old D20 Game of Thrones role-playing game that that company did that then like went bankrupt immediately afterwards. And I have the limited edition of that one, which has like an interview with George R. R. Martin in the back, and it has like sprayed edges, like gold edges, and leather bound thing. And
that's why they went bankrupt.
That is probably the case. Yes, but I got lucky, and I got lucky.
Not the way you publish role-playing game books. Nobody does.
Yeah, and I think like the only like literate like fiction book that I still own from that I actually bought after I was too blind to read was the complete works of William Blake.
All right.
Because the interesting thing there is that they took the Blake stuff and they have all of them like printed or reprinted in the original size, which kind of makes a lot of sense when you look at like Blake's stuff, like of illuminating his manuscripts and stuff like that. So they're all in the original size, whether it's like a very small one or like a very big one. So there is a level of detail there that I think is kind of gets lost in all the other versions of Blake that you can get all over the place. So
yeah,
I figured that was like something I wanted to invest in, and then I have like I can let it lie around, and then people that come to my place will have to find this massive fucking slab of paper and go like, what the fuck is this? And I'm like, well, you ever heard about tigers burning bright?
Yeah, and his illustrations were gorgeous. I mean, like the first time I saw his illustrations, I thought, this guy's insane, right?
Yeah.
And he basically was, I guess, but he insane genius at the same time, you know.
Oh, very
Yeah.
much.
Thornall asks, I don't know who he's asking, certainly not me, since I don't put out any videos anymore, but has anyone ever thought about doing something like essential fantasy books or must-read fantasy books or most referenced fantasy books? I think probably lots of people have done that on BookTube, I would think, but
might I refer you to the entire channel of Philip Chase?
yeah. The best of fantasy, so to speak. Yeah.
It's certainly something I would disagree with Philip on, because I tend to disagree with everyone.
Exactly. Disagreeing is your job.
That's kind of my point, yeah.
Or at least hobby. You're unemployed, but that's your hobby.
Well, I mean,
passionate hobby.
You know how the job center thing that I had to go to told me that I'm clearly I'm clearly unemployable for a regular full-time job, but I would be perfect for a part-time and project-oriented work in entertainment, activism, and journalism, which I guess means they're going to pay me unemployment so I can keep on doing
what you do. Yeah.
Yeah, which is exactly. I mean, I'm glad they realized that.
I was just extremely relieved to hear that they judged you unfit to be a fighter pilot.
Yes, that is definitely something I'm also relieved about.
Yeah,
but it's like clearly,
I think all of Germany is relieved that you are not being given a fighter jet.
Definitely, it's like, but
for multiple reasons, not just because you're blind. Multiple reasons.
Oh yeah, the blindness is the least of the problems with me being a fighter pilot.
Exactly.
No, it's like I thought about doing like a video series or whatever about the best or like most relevant or essential or whatever, and I never do it because I feel I'm not qualified enough to do that.
Yeah, it's a big statement. You're not just saying these are the best books, but you're saying I decided that these are the best books. So it feels.
I mean, to be fair,
like a lot.
If New York Times is making decisions about the 100 best books of the 21st century, I feel like we are able to make that determination as well. Put our hat.
I wouldn't put myself on the same cultural relevance level as the New York Times.
I'm trying to.
The New York Times is rapidly losing any form of respect I ever had for it, and that's not because of that 100 books list, which is okay. I get. I looked at the list, and I have read 5 of those books, so I'm far from being, a literary fiction snob. But I've read 5 of them, and I'm really happy they included the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin, which I think is correct. It's one of the most important books of the last 20 years.
Yes. I agree 100%.
It's definitely one of the most formative and important science fiction novels of the new millennium, I think, and it will have like an impact like further down the road in a lot of ways that other stuff maybe doesn't have necessarily. But I think it's
I read it
really
quite a while ago, and I don't remember much of it. I remember overall that I wasn't that into it. But from what I've heard, a lot of people talk about it. I can see the reason that you would say what you just said, but I just didn't really enjoy it very much. Look who it is.
Hello, everybody.
Hey,
New Zealand on the screen. How you doing, Derry?
I'm gonna be tired.
I was going to say, are you awake already?
I'm still awake. I think it's more the case. Yeah. Evie knows I've been up since 2 this morning.
Goodness. Why's that?
Why?
Because Colin and Ben have just finished Fool's Quest, and we're discussing.
Oh, that's right. They just
journey with that, and of course I was going to watch that live. And then Laura was live with Joanna. And so I was like, well, it's only 20 minutes, so I'll stay up and watch that. And then I had a cup of tea, and
now it's time for the pub.
And now the pub's on, so I'll just sleep during the day today.
Why not?
That's the best choice ever. You can always go sleeping your day away, to quote that other Danish band that that is not the one that Matt always mentions.
I see. Fair enough.
Gasoline.
So
No.
I missed which book you were talking about as I entered.
The fifth season by N.K. Jemisin. And I agree, Matt. I can understand that it's, not necessarily an entertaining book for a lot of people, but I think it did something that, authors like, Octavia Butler did before, and it did something that stuff that people like Ursula Le Guin did before, but N.K. Jemisin managed to do that in the context of the 2010s and moving that discourse forward and showing that you can write entertaining fantasy, science fiction, whatever genre fiction with a very clear political stance and be successful with it. That in its own, I think, did break down a lot of barriers and a lot of sort of assumptions within genre fiction that makes it so important to me, where I'm like,
no, I could definitely see its cultural relevance in its time. I just didn't find it a particularly enjoyable book. I was just brushing Fitz hair off of my keyboard, and I think I hit a button that
you just don't want me here. Just be honest.
The block out dairy button. The hide dairy button. Yeah,
totally.
No, the fifth season, I always have a bit of a hard time personally with reading novels that do have a very strong political angle that are being very preachy about it, and that felt quite preachy to me.
For me, it felt more angry, and since I'm an angry person, I like angry books, so it worked really well for me. And also, yes, Cloud Atlas is on that list. I have not read Cloud Atlas. I read fifth season. I have read The Plot Against America.
Cloud Atlas is pretty cool. Yeah.
Oh, I know. It's another one that I bought and I really want to read, and it's sort of like in my Audible library since forever, and I always forget that I have it. But I'm pretty sure that I will love it. From everything I've heard, it sounds like something that I will be very, very, into. So I read the Plot Against America by Philip Roth. The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay by Michael Chabon.
That was really good. Now, I liked that a lot.
That book is so good, and I understand.
Very cool.
Once again, I get why this is on that list. It fits in the 100 best books of the 21st century.
Totally. Yeah.
The Plot Against America, I did read the fifth season, and there's two others, and I just can't remember which ones those were, but I read like two more that I
don't remember at all what it was, but I remember going through the list, and I think I had hit 7 or 8 of the books on the list.
Oh yeah, right. The Road by Cormac McCarthy is on the list. I read that one, and there's another one that I keep forgetting. But 5, I'm good. I don't like those ideas. I mean, what Thornell said, I think, makes sense to go like these are essential fantasy books or science fiction books or whatever, in the sense that they have had like an impact on the genre and sort of like being, inspirational and influential on other authors afterwards and so forth. And that's how I would interpret the idea of like essential fantasy. And that's kind of my point, is like, I don't think I'm knowledgeable enough in fantasy or science fiction to make that call. I can certainly, point out a bunch of books where I can sort of trace their influence and think they are important and so forth.
Yeah.
But
and I think you would of booktubers I know, I think you would be pretty good at that. I did a video ages ago.
Wisest.
Yeah, I did a video ages ago where I personally realized I didn't really know much about the fantasy genre before Tolkien, and then I started looking into it and I talked to some people about it, and then I did a video which was fantasy books before Tolkien, basically. And even then I still got comments from people saying, well, you left this out, and I'm like, it's not comprehensive, and I'm new at this. Just trying to share some stuff that I was learning recently. So I think it would be cool. I mean, if you're looking at fantasy as a genre or science fiction as a genre, not just that is entertaining, but if you're looking at it like building on itself, like there are people who paved the way by writing about this, and then there were some other things that other people were then able to write about, and there's a connection from this to this, and that kind of stuff. I think it would be pretty interesting.
As someone who loves Jonathan Strange, Mr. Norrell, reading Blood in the Mist, and then more recently, The King of Elfland's Daughter, you can see the direct influences on Susanna Clarke.
Yes.
So,
those roots
and both of those books are
and...
incredibly good. Especially Blood in the Mist is so fantastic.
Yeah, that was in my video, and therefore also on my shelf, but I haven't gotten to it yet. Huh?
It's on the list. It's on the list.
It's on the list.
On the
yeah.
list.
Yeah.
That's never ending. That I will probably never finish and be come back as a kid. Try to finish the TBR.
This is the problem with mood reading. So I was reading this a couple of weeks ago, the third book
still going through.
Well, I felt like I needed a bit of a break from the pace.
It's the part one into Green Angel Tower, right?
Yeah, it's Siege. It's so weird with these. Sometimes they have their own titles. Sometimes they're just called part one, part
Depends
two.
on the edition, I think, right?
Yeah, and it's been like, in fact, I have 4 books, and each of them is a different edition because I had to buy them used. Because I couldn't get new ones in Germany at the moment. Anyway, I was reading this, and I was like, I don't want to burn out on the slow burn pace. So
keeping it fresh.
I started the Final Architecture by Adrian Tchaikovsky, and I thought I would read one of these and go back to Green Angel Tower, but unfortunately these are awesome. And they're like a roller coaster of fun characters, really motley crew, epic universe changing events, and I was like, I have to read the second one immediately.
And just to make sure, it's also sad because I love the series, and I have to maintain my reputation.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Right.
Also,
one thing though, Matt, I totally get the thing with like stopping with like Green Angel Tower. The dark secret about Tad Williams is that he's really cool at world building and all this other stuff. He sucks at ending. Like his endings are always not very satisfying.
I remember that from Otherland. I read Otherland, all of them.
The ending of Otherland is just really terrible.
And then you're like, good at the end, like, what? Like, okay.
With Otherland, it's worse than with the first Ostenard series, I think, because Otherland has this like weird plot element that he kind of pulls out of his ass at the end of the whole series, and I'm like, okay, so it was about this thing that you never really hinted at even before. I don't know, man. I don't care.
Aaron finished Piranesi, and loved it apparently, which is the appropriate response. It was a very, very cool book. I loved it. And when I reviewed it, or I did I think it was a monthly wrap-up video, but I was reading Piranesi, and I kept thinking, just because the title sounds so Italian, I kept thinking of my good friend Alessandro Parodi, who lives in Hamburg. And I actually asked him to send me a video of him saying Piranesi. So every time when I was talking about the book, and I said Piranesi, I cut in him saying Piranesi. So
well, I mean, Piranesi was an Italian architect and artist.
Yeah, exactly. So and I always pronounce it in my head when I see the title, Piranesi.
Yeah. Fun thing about Blood in the Mist, though, Hope Merleys, the author, was at some point friend of Virginia Woolf, although Virginia Woolf really hated her when they first met, but then later sort of like really appreciated her. So, which is interesting because Hope Merleys only ever wrote that one novel and then did some poetry and then moved to Africa, I think.
Yeah, when I did that video and I was picking up books and learning stuff, I was like, Merleys? Never heard of Hope Merleys before, but apparently an awesome and very influential book.
Michael Swanwick wrote a biography of Hope Merleys that is kind of hard to find because it only exists as an ebook, and there's like region lock things on buying it, which is incredibly frustrating, but yeah. So Michael Swanwick, author of The Iron Dragon's Daughter and a bunch of others, new weird kind of books, wrote a biography of Hope Merleys.
Right.
So, Jerome, funny you say that you see a lot of Blood in the Mist in Gaiman Stardust. Neil Gaiman wrote the introduction, which, okay, what I'm about to say is not surprising because he writes introductions.
Neil Gaiman wrote the introduction to every second fantasy book ever published.
True, but he did write the introduction to
Blood in the Mist.
I have of Blood in the Mist.
Yeah, you have the sort of cream colored with the debossed
like
green and magenta sort of. Yeah.
I agree with Jeroen. There is a lot of Blood in the Mist in Stardust, very clearly. That's like one of the things that I find like interesting with the whole like Neil Gaiman thing is like, since he did all of these like introductions, forwards and whatnot, and new editions of all these like unknown or very little known, really cool older fantasy stuff, the whole like thing around him right now is causing like damage and harm to people that, to authors that are already like have been dead for like 50 years at this point, but it's one of those like people weird things that is like sort of collateral damage that is kind of hard to sort of calculate. And I know that Nala Hopkinson, like Blackheart Man, had a Neil Gaiman quote on the cover, and they removed it for the ebook and the audiobook and replaced it with a different author's quote by someone else. But obviously the first print run has the Neil Gaiman thing on the cover, which kind of sucks because right now that's sort of like in everyone's news, so it may actually
I could imagine both things, that people will not be picking up a book that's endorsed by Neil Gaiman just because Neil Gaiman, and also maybe that bookstores, I mean, at least physical bookstores,
they won't be wanting to display them.
They'll be putting them off the shelf, or at least not displaying them prominently, or whatever.
My local Barnes & Noble still has a shit ton of Neil Gaiman's works, so I don't think bookstores are going to care. But
bookstores are not going to care, but like readers might care.
What's on their shelves, but in terms of what's on display, where you have multiple copies front facing,
so
I think that will be definitely changed.
To Jeroen's point, so there's the layers here. Neil Gaiman, his Stardust is The Wall, which is from Susanna Clark's world in Ladies of Grace Adieu. And that's literally like he took The Wall from, it's the same world.
Yeah.
Obviously, then Susanna Clark was inspired by.
I need to read those short stories. I have those on my shelf. I got them recently, but
they're very fun for me. They're very fun. They were a great hangover cure, I guess, after I finished Jonathan Strange, Mr. Norrell. Because it allowed me to be in the world a little bit more.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, Colin, have you guys watched like earlier this year? There was this wonderful panel discussion, whatever conversation thing hosted by, I think, the British Library, with Alan Moore in conversation with Susanna Clark, or the other way around. And it was like really fun to listen to Susanna Clark and Alan Moore, who've apparently known each other for like 30 years at this point, or 40 years, having a conversation about, art and what it means to write about Britain and take British stuff in their books and stuff. And it was really interesting. I thought, like, I think it's still on YouTube, and I feel like both Matt and Evie might really enjoy that. I don't know about Alicia and Derry, because I don't know how much you're into Susanna Clark and Alan Moore, but I think both Evie and Matt might really enjoy that conversation if you haven't checked it out yet.
I'm looking it up right now.
I was a fan of Alan Moore, but I haven't read either of Susanna Clark's works.
Yeah, I had a realization. I mean, it's not exactly rocket science, but I hadn't really thought of it before. Earlier this year, where I was like, a lot of the books, just because we read a lot of fantasy, are quite chunky. So it's quite a time investment, and it can be very intense reading a book. And I sort of made a habit of, when I finish a book and I feel the need, I read a handful of short stories. So I went through a buy short stories phase.
Yeah.
So now I have a meter of short stories, and Ladies of Grace Adieu was one of them, one of
It's
the collections.
Shameless self-plug, because you still have time to participate, everyone. Short story September.
Yeah.
For September and October, read short stories, everyone.
There's, in that spirit, let me mention that there are 2 short story collections by the incredibly talented, wonderful, and also sadly underappreciated Nalo Hopkinson that are free on Audible. Both Skinfolk and Falling in Love with Hominids, which is a wonderful title, are both free on Audible if you have like an Audible subscription.
Yeah.
I've never been quote unquote triggered by anything before, and I never understood when people were like, "Oh, this book triggered me" or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I appreciate it, but I was like, "Really?" And then I started to read Midnight Robbery.
Yeah, I thought you would say that one.
And I literally could not finish the book. Like I think I got like what, maybe 75, 100 pages into it, something like that, and I'm like, I can't. Like, this is giving me so much anxiety and stressing me out and quote unquote triggering me. Like, I now know what people mean when they say that.
Yeah.
What subjects in it were so triggering? I don't know anything about it.
Child sexual abuse.
Fair enough.
An incestual child sexual abuse.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay.
And it's not even like just, this is a scene. It is an underlying,
an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
It's a core theme of the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're from the perspective of the child, so she's constantly ruminating about it, but not like directly. Like she's ruminating. Words hard. Of what I read, she is thinking about it, reflecting on it, but not in a direct way. It's how she understands what happened. It's not like, oh yeah, my dad did this. It's like, oh, Papa did this, whatever. I don't know if that makes sense, but
falls under the category of stuff I don't want in my brain.
Yeah, kind of.
The thing is, Nalo Hopkinson in general is an incredible writer, an incredible storyteller, and does fascinating stuff. But she's definitely more on the literary side of fiction, and she does not shy away from like painful shit.
Doesn't pull
her command of the storytelling and her
she doesn't get enough credit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think like in that regard, I feel like Blackheart Man, her new novel, might actually work really well because, the sad part is that like a lot of very few people on BookTube, for example, are reading it. But it is a very fast-paced, action-heavy kind of fantasy story that does have its like
a retelling, right? Of it's like folklore retelling.
No, it's not. It does obviously pull from all kinds of Caribbean myth in a lot of ways that like all of like Hopkinson's stuff does. But and obviously the Blackheart Man is a sort of like folklore figure in Caribbean myth. But it's like she's created like her own like Caribbean like island kingdom in a lot of ways with like her own form of patois that she kind of mixed together from her background of both Jamaican and Trinidad and Tobago kind of background where she grew up in, and it's really interesting, and it's got like the most annoying main character ever.
Purposely annoying, not like
No, look, you are Fitz fans. You might kind of there's a lot of Simon Mooncalf and a lot of Fitz in there. More Simon Mooncalf than Fitz, I guess. But her main character, Vikosi, she said in an interview that she was trying to write a stoner grad student, and which kind of makes sense. He's the kind of character who clearly has his heart in the right place and wants to do the right thing, but he's very clearly, thinks too highly of himself and of his ability to sort of like sort things out on his own, and that leads him into all kinds of trouble constantly.
Simon Mooncalf has actually made me like and understand Fitz more, because the more I read about Simon, I'm like, wait a sec, no, Simon is actually stupid.
Yeah,
Fitz is not stupid. He's just self-centered. or not as
Fitz just
stupid.
doesn't know to look in directions that
He
will
just
solve
he
his
just
problems.
doesn't look outside himself much. He
Yeah.
doesn't understand people outside of himself, and he's
When he's
mostly
pointed
always
at
thinking
them,
about
he
himself.
gets it.
Yeah, when he's concentrating. But Simon Mooncalf, at least to start with, is just stupid.
Simon Mooncalf
he's
made
pretty
me.
dumb.
I feel like Simon Mooncalf is one of the best like representations of like ADHD teenagerhood that I've seen in like epic fantasy.
Yeah, he's very ADHD. Even in the very first scenes with him, where like he's meant to be going somewhere, and then he sees something somewhere.
He sees
goes
the
to
frog and he
investigate
just
it.
like plays with that frog for like the next 5 hours.
He sees a frog on the way to some important thing he's meant to do, and never does the thing because he's too involved with the frog, and doesn't realize that time has passed. So he's very much an ADHD head.
I felt very seen in those books. I also felt very seen with the whole like with Vikosi and Blackheart Man. But also, Blackheart Man has a camel that loves to drink beer, and if that's not a recommendation for a book, I don't know what is.
Always good.
Well, there is that.
Sinapoma.
Yeah,
first of all,
I've
welcome. I don't think I've ever seen you in the pub
No.
before. At least you haven't
Hello.
spoken. And this is a dairy question.
Yeah,
I would say
if you've made it through.
Exactly. If you don't find Fitz annoying yet, then you're probably good. Yeah.
Because he doesn't get more dense than what he is in Assassin's Apprentice, and will occasionally now have insights.
Yeah.
So you've encountered him at his most irritating in Assassin's Apprentice in terms of really you haven't clicked. That doesn't mean he doesn't occasionally re-reach that standard in many of the books to come. But
the results of his ignorance become more epic, though.
Yeah, they do.
There are bits where him being kind of dumb.
Situations or characters kind of go, could you pay attention to this, please? He'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, okay, right, yeah, got ya. And he's fine. But unless it's pointed out to him, he tends to be oblivious.
Capricious Fox, I don't know where you live, but yes, it's kind of difficult to get Black Company books sometimes because they're underappreciated. There's like these like 3.
You can get all of them on Amazon in Germany. Strangely,
yes, you can get them in Amazon in Germany. I remember like 2 years ago, a year ago, someone on the Unabridged Burners Malazan Discord was going like, I'm going to buy them, and he went to Waterstones, and he was living in the UK at the time. And he was like, and they found like one copy of the second like collection. There's like these collection of like the first one is like the first trilogy, the Books of the North, and then you have the Books of the South and whatever the others are called. And that second collection, they had like one copy. Waterstones had one copy in the entirety of the UK, so they shipped it from Glasgow to London for him to pick up, and that's like the only copy of that second bound up of Black Company books that was available at Waterstones in all of the UK. So depending on where you live, it is hard to get Black Company books, which is kind of sad.
Sinapoma, that is I think why we love Fitz is he's so relatable. Like he's a fantasy superhero in a way who is dumb like us. He is a fantasy hero, fantasy protagonist who is not perfect.
And
he's got a lot of things that are just
aiming for kinghood or
no.
Like he's not going to be the key person in massive events. He's always going to be on the periphery.
Yeah,
and that makes him interesting to read.
I'm not sure if Night Eyes is the best animal.
Go away, Raph.
Ever.
Go away.
He's
go
good.
away.
He's
go
good,
away.
But he's not the best animal.
No, you're not allowed to say that. No, you're wrong. No, I shan't hear it. No. Night Eyes is by far and away the best animal companion ever.
There you go. I removed Raph.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You're not allowed, Raph.
Sorry, Raph. I was joking. I just took you off the screen.
So, Derry, you're gonna hate me for this. So remember when we did the Robin Hobb book tag with Pranav?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. And how you guys were like, oh yeah, you'll once you meet him, you'll understand. And you'll see why Solovey's not the best animal companion.
Yeah,
I mean,
and I'm
finished
about
the
a third of the
series.
way through Witch of the Winter of the Witch, and I stand by Night Eyes is by far
Well,
the best.
I stand by mine that still Soleil is the best animal companion. So.
No,
I think the thing that's really special about Night Eyes is you can actually hear him. Like he can talk.
Soleil,
Not-
but you
not
can
talk,
with Soleil as
but-
well. But Soleil
Okay.
is also a mystical creature. He's not really real.
Ah, right.
Night Eyes is real. In terms
Does
of
so
reality.
what? So, Derry, are huge wooden traveling trunks also animal companions, though?
No, sentient pearwood is different.
Okay.
Thornall,
Okay? The luggage is in his own category.
Thornall, do you mean Zarth or do you
That is
mean
very true.
Xanth? You talking Zarth or is that a typo, Xanth? I've never heard of Zarth.
It's Zarth. It's the Piers Anthony
Okay.
series.
That's Xanth.
Okay.
Oh, really? It showed up for me for Zarth. Oh, that's weird. Okay.
No, Piers Anthony. It's in his name. Xanth.
But if the luggage was your example, Raph, then I will give you that, but I don't count the luggage as an animal companion.
I read all the Xanth books that were out back when I was a teenager. I don't think I would like them very much now because they're mostly built around pretty stupid jokes. Not that funny fantasy isn't a thing that should exist. I mean, I've learned to enjoy Discworld in the last year and a half. But Xanth is, I remember a lot of the jokes being pretty stupid. Like it, and like I said, literally the name of the world, Xanth, comes from the author's name, Piers Anthony, right?
Yeah.
I think the problem with like humor and sex are the hardest things to write because they're so incredibly personal that. Like there's only like 1% of your potential audience that will actually get sort of like understand what you're trying to do, whether it's writing like sex scenes or writing humor, because those are so incredibly personal. And there's ways of getting around that and making it sort of like more approachable, I guess. And Discworld certainly does that, but as soon as you try to do other humor, it kind of gets really difficult to appeal to anyone. It's like, I fucking hated Kings of the Wild, and everyone told me I should read it because I would probably love it because it's it's about rock and roll and
rock and roll
games and humor. And I read it and I found it incredibly bad. Like it totally didn't work for me in any way.
I would have
relatively soonish on my gonna read soon pile.
I am actually not that surprised that you specifically, Raph, didn't like that book. That I would never have recommended that to you, but just very specifically because you're you. But there's a lot of people, I think, like everybody seems to enjoy it, It
was very clearly a me thing.
You wouldn't,
It's like,
would we perhaps like to do a splint?
I love how you switch into like your German accent when you do that.
Splints?
Just as okay. Cinnabon, or however I say your name, I do apologize if I've got that wrong. We can be friends.
Dungeon Crawler Carl?
Yeah, we can be friends.
Gary's learning to love Dungeon Crawler Carl.
No, I have learned. I've read the whole thing 3 times since the 1st of August.
Right. I didn't realize you'd dived in quite so heavily. Yeah.
I have glommed it onto my personality, and
However, I think we have to kick Capricious Fox.
I haven't read this series, but I doubt very much that there's a character in it that's as good or better.
I haven't read the series, and I am certain you're wrong.
She's a fantastic writer, though. I will recommend hers, her books in general.
But I have heard good things about.
She can't have written the best animal companion.
No,
well,
it's just not possible.
That's the great thing about the best, title. It's subjective.
I still will argue it.
Not when you're talking about Night Eyes.
Clearly,
and in second place is Oi. So like 1 and 2 are already taken. Tamara Pierce can write someone that takes 3, but like Night Eyes, Oi, and then everybody else. It's just the way it is. It's part of reality.
Yeah.
Crone from Malazan. If you read Malazan and you thought Crone was an animal companion, you didn't understand Crone.
Animander
anyway.
Rake is a test and the companion to Crone.
Exactly.
Crone is just to
Exactly.
make sure Crone is the giant raven, correct?
Exactly. Exactly. The giant magic
I actually
eating
retained
raven.
some stuff from reading Guardians of the Moon. It's amazing.
Oh my god. Yeah. Anyway, why don't we do a splint? Let's say until 22. Whoops.
Okay. I'm fighting yawns and the cat wants to come in. So I'm going to drop and probably go to bed finally.
Good to see you. Enjoy your
Lovely
sleep.
your faces. And chat, you're all fabulous.
See you,
Gary,
Derry.
for me,
Bye.
share thoughts of Winter of the Witch. I'm going to drop as well because I got to figure out dinner. So
No worries.
bye.
So we are going to sprint for how long?
Until 22:10 for you. So
That
slightly
sounds-
over half an hour.
Wait, until 40, you mean?
Yeah.
So wait, 22:10, not 20. Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna
So
start
half an
reading
hour
about someone shooting
and
up a
5
pub.
minutes. All right. Enjoy. And don't forget to
Oh, yeah.
mute yourselves.
Give me a second.
I always just say that because I have often forgotten it in the past. Later. Hello. How was everyone's reading?
Not too bad. I got a chapter and a half done.
Cool. Britain's here. Kale is also here. Hi, Kale.
It's the usual gang. How you doing, Matt?
Not bad. Not bad. Just reading Eyes of the Void, which is very good.
I started Return to Eden by Dr.
Cool.
Philip Chase, and it's pretty good so far.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I only read the first one so far. I have the other two on my shelf, but I enjoyed it.
I think it's Return to Eden. Yes, it is Return to Eden.
Yeah, and it completely ruined my view of Philip as a gentle and quiet, nice man.
Oh yeah, it gets pretty gnarly in this book.
It's pretty bloodthirsty. Yeah, I was a little surprised. Yeah, that's right, Pete. Alan's performance of the audiobook is coming soon.
Yeah, whatever the hell that means.
I don't know, but I'm sure they're doing it as good and quick as they can.
You think it's going to be the goodest, Matt?
I'm really interested to hear it. I mean, it's weird. I've never listened to an audiobook that was done by someone I kind of know, and it's weird. It's weird thinking of Alan's voice, because when I hear Alan's voice, I think of Alan. I don't necessarily think of the story he's telling or the character or whatever. But he's also good at doing voices, like different voices. So I'm interested. Pete says like a week or two, Amazon. But he also says maybe. He don't know nothing.
Now, I can agree that Amazon is often idiotic, but they're also pretty good at getting stuff out. So I'm just saying, pretty good at that stuff.
Yeah. Audio engineers are taking.
This, what were you talking about? Beyond
the Way of Adam, and the audiobook, which is coming out quite soon, but the audio engineers are taking longer than expected.
I watched Philip's video, and I agree with you, Matt. I'm definitely going to listen to it because it's Philip's book and whatnot. But I know Philip's incredibly excited about Alan doing the reading and everything, and I get it because Alan's a friend and everything. But I don't think it will enhance my enjoyment of the book.
It's interesting because the only time I don't audiobook very much. I don't have anywhere near Raf's experience with it, but the only time I've ever listened to a narrator who I was aware of visually before listening was Andy Serkis doing The Hobbit. And he's a very, I don't know if charismatic's the word, but like he's a real personality, like
animated.
Yeah, he's very animated and he's a real personality as an actor. And I'd seen him in Andor, like him as an actor. And of course there was his motion capture and voice performance in Lord of the Rings and everything. I've seen him a bit. And I found that listening to him performing The Hobbit, I forgot to think about him as a person after a while. He was doing a good job with the voices, and I got into the characters.
I have my problem with obviously I prefer the old Lord of the Rings audiobooks because that's the ones that I grew up with. So there's nostalgia kind of tied to it. And Rob Inglis is.
I'm not even talking about whether they're good compared to anything or not, but more just this idea that I didn't really think of them as Andy Serkis.
The thing I found interesting is that when you listen to the not so much the Hobbit, but the Lord of the Rings audiobooks that he did, he does sort of when he's does the different voice for different characters, he kind of goes and tries to sort of do his impression of the different actors that play.
He was
those
doing the
characters
movie
in
voices.
the movies.
Yeah. No, in The Hobbit as well.
That is something that I have a problem with, because it very much sort of like restricts or limits sort of like the imaginary space that you're in, because suddenly you're not listening to Lord of the Rings, you're listening to Lord of the Rings the movie as an audiobook, and that's different. And that's something I find sort of like, as someone who kind of has to rely on audiobooks, I feel I might be getting less than the full experience because it's already limited. I understand that it's incredibly entertaining for people that have grown up with the movies and so forth, and they can always go back and read the books.
I wonder what his Tom Bombadil sounds like.
I haven't listened to Lord of the Rings. I what you were saying, Ralph, I had the same feeling in The Hobbit, listening to The Hobbit, because it is very much like, oh, now he's doing Bilbo's actor's voice, now he's doing Gandalf's actor's voice, and and of course his Gollum
why it's incredibly
his Gollum.
And I know a lot of people love those audiobooks, and I understand why, but for me, I'm losing something there.
Yeah. Circus's Bombadil was very annoying, apparently. Well, I just watched...
Is that because it was Circus's version of Bombadil, or is that something because you find Bombadil in general
annoying?
I love Bombadil, and nobody seems to like it.
I love Tom Bombadil, but it is kind of a standard. Ursula says she doesn't hate him. It is sort of a standard reaction to him. Like, I know people who've DNF'd.
Okay, now also says that they love Bombadil in general, so I guess it's a Circus thing. I don't know.
Yeah. I just watched Rings of Power season 2, or what's there so far.
I only watched 2 episodes of that first 1.5 episodes of that first season, and then I just couldn't do it anymore. The
first season was pretty bad. The second season overall, I have found it basically overall better than the first season.
Okay.
And I also very consciously went into it with an attitude of, I am watching some fantasy show that has nothing to do with Tolkien. And if you've convinced yourself that it has nothing to do with Tolkien and it's just fantasy TV, it's actually pretty good.
So you basically gaslit yourself into liking it. That's nice, Matt.
No, I'm capable as a mature adult of putting my mind in certain frames.
Fair enough.
And
Daniel Kluser, I have to say, if you try to come ring-a-ding-dillo at me, I'll raise you a tra-la-la-lally, come down to the valley.
They did a really weird thing.
I don't get that.
Ring-a-ding-dillo is something that Tom Bombadil sings, and tra-la-la-lally, come down to the valley is the song that the elves sing in The Hobbit when Bilbo and gang are getting down into Rivendell after escaping from the trolls. So I'm just saying, like, dumb rhymes are not something that is restricted to Tom Bombadil. It's something that is
he doesn't have the trademark on silly rhyming, although he does a lot of it. They did a really weird thing. They did a couple of weird things that I don't really understand in Rings of the Power season 2, specifically with Tom Bombadil. One, he is in the middle of a desert, living as a hermit. You're like, okay, I don't know why he's there, and it's not really explained, at least so far. And it kind of feels like he needed to be there because another character was there and they needed to meet Tom. So Tom's there. The other thing is, right when they introduce him, he's talking to someone. He goes out of the room when somebody comes into his house and Tom is in another room and he's singing to Goldberry. And then he comes into the room where this visitor is and they're like, oh, is someone else here? And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. So Goldberry isn't in it.
Interesting.
But she is, because Tom was talking to her or singing to her. I don't know. That was one of the bits where I couldn't stop thinking about Tolkien, because Tom is such a, I don't know, such a very specific kind of character, you know. Anyway, Kale says Silo season 2 is soon. That would be cool, because Silo season 1 I thought was very well done. I really enjoyed it.
I would vote for Sauron, because he builds autobahns and makes the trains come on time. That's worth something, isn't it?
Very German answer.
Sauron
No,
2024.
the trains running on time thing is more like an Italian fascist thing, because it's sort of like the thing that like everyone says like Mussolini did, which is wrong, because the trains were delayed in Italy during fascist rule, but people claim that.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree, Daniel. The elves in Rivendell are very different in The Hobbit and in Lord of the Rings. They are much sillier in. And Samwise, I agree. My favorite Lord of the Rings thing, my favorite Lord of the Rings character that gets to have, well, not like dialogue, but at least internal monologue, is the fox.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like at some point Tolkien.
That random fox.
Yeah, there's a random fox that has intelligent thoughts, and then like you can imagine that after that Tolkien was like, do I really want intelligent animals everywhere? Like, is this a kid's book? No, it's not. So I'm going to cut out that. Yeah, the fox is a weird anomaly. The fox is like Tyrion acrobating around the place.
I think the fox is sort of like one of those like Hobbit holdovers, because of course you have the eagles in the Hobbit and everything. So animals speaking or thinking is Hobbit territory. It's not necessarily Lord of the Rings territory, but you have this Hobbit, this fox going like, hobbits 3 sleeping outdoors. There's something mighty queer going on, and then Tolkien's like, he was right, although he never found out why. And I'm like, you bastard! You just did this.
And that feels like something that should have been in The Hobbit, but not in Lord of the Rings.
But yeah, the fox has stayed with me ever since I first read it. It's like, wait, there's a fox in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, well, I always put it in the same box as the introduction of Tyrion in A Song of Ice and Fire, where he's sitting on the lintel of a door.
Yes.
And he bounces down like an acrobat and rolls or something. I forget exactly what words are used, but he's basically made out to be this like uber acrobat.
Yeah.
And never again.
Yeah.
Tyrion after that is just dude, and he doesn't bounce and do acrobatics all over the place ever again. But yeah, the fox and Tyrion belong in the same category for me. Apparently Tom Bombadil in season 2 of the Rings of Power is the Kwisatz Haderach. Okay. I wasn't aware.
Yeah, Tom Bombadil takes some of the spice and just becomes like the god of Arrakis.
Maybe. I mean, his eyes are not strangely blue, so.
But he's certainly stoned enough.
Seems stoned, and actually, they made him in the show, understandably, not quite as bizarre and out of touch with reality and stoned seeming as he is in the books. I would challenge you, Samwise. Samwise said, wait a sec, where is it? I'm just trying to find it. He says there are lots of Tolkien that's sillier than people remember. Not that the books are silly, but there's lots of silly singing songs and characters. Yes. Actually, my feeling was, of course, in The Hobbit, that's the case, for sure. The dwarves are silly, the elves are kind of silly, there's all sorts of silly stuff. But Lord of the Rings, the only real silly going on, to me, was Tom Bombadil. And that's part of the reason that he seems so strangely out of place. Because
the thing is, like,
there are lots of songs, but there are not lots of silly songs. Just because there's a song doesn't mean it's silly.
I think Lord of the Rings is I hate to state the obvious, but I think it's because Lord of the Rings is a bit of a darker story than The Hobbit.
You're right. That is obvious. Yes,
I feel like
it is. The Hobbit's meant to be a kid's book. It was written for kids.
The interesting thing to me is that I don't think Tom Bombadil is that silly. in like the way he describes Tom Bombadil never came off as like, I mean, on the surface, yes, he's singing, he's speaking in rhymes
That's
all the
what I
time.
mean.
He's apparently
That's what I mean.
and it's easy to see that it's silly, but like when I read it, it's like, holy shit, this guy is so powerful. He just doesn't have to give a fuck.
Yeah, like he is eldest, and he picks up the ring and laughs at it and all of that. He's obviously like really serious business and super powerful.
He's silly in the same way Treebeard is silly. It's like, you're laughing at him now, but watch him take down fucking Isengard next day.
Yeah, exactly. Watch him pull down a stone tower.
Watch him just completely demolish the orcs.
Yeah,
and Saruman's plans.
And it's interesting because a lot of people, go like, oh, a lot of people don't like Tom Bombadil and go like, oh, it's so silly. He's just stone. It's easy to make those like, stoner jokes and stuff. And I get it, right? It's right there, at least, from our perspective now. But it never feels that way when I'm reading it because it's just like the surface level reading of Tom Bombadil. So that guy's a lot of things, but he's clearly not silly.
So is he like a more whimsical version of like Dr. Manhattan? He's just so like powerful. He doesn't
he's beyond Dr. Manhattan. Tom Bombadil is basically an incarnation.
I don't know if there's anyone who's beyond Dr. Manhattan, Matt.
Tom Bombadil is. He is the eldest. Before stars existed, Tom Bombadil was on Middle Earth.
So wait, is he God?
No, he's something separate. He doesn't reference the gods at all, but he is eldest on Earth. So before the elves were made, there was apparently Tom Bombadil. I mean, I've always seen him as basically a personification of nature.
Yes.
He is nature in a person. And
which is
with all of what that could theoretically include.
Yeah, and that's like whimsical on the one hand, but it's also incredibly dangerous on the other hand because nature is,
everybody in Middle Earth should be really happy that Tom is happy.
Yes.
Because if he wasn't, he'd be murdering everyone.
Well, I mean, he might just express his mood, and then if his mood wasn't so lighthearted as it is, which can be seen as silly, that would be pretty bad for everybody that has to live in nature.
Even Gandalf would be like, "Oh shit, I don't know, I can't deal with this."
Gandalf came to Middle Earth way after
Bombadil. Yes.
Yeah. And actually, at the end of Lord of the Rings, after going through all of this heavy shit, Gandalf was like, you know what? I'm going to take a holiday. I'm going to go hang out with Tom for a while.
Yeah.
Tom is like someone he looks up to.
He's a moss gatherer, and I'm a stone that has been rolling far too long. That's like Tolkien. That's what makes Tolkien so beautiful. Like his writings are beautiful. It's like that's like a metaphor that I understand what you're saying there, and it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Also, I agree. I mean, I have not listened to the entirety of the Circus books. I think that the Rob Inglis audiobooks do have like really good singing stuff. Like the way he does the incredibly fun party song that is down to Goblin Town in The Hobbit, which is an absolute banger of a song and a poem.
Banger of a song. I don't think I ever dreamed of anyone describing a Tolkien song as a banger.
No, seriously. The thing is, if you look at like the lyrics, like the poem, song, whatever you want to call it, the goblins sing that are like they're orcs in The Hobbit that take Bilbo and gang down into the Misty Mountains. That is prime musical stuff. You can just like imagine that being performed on like a Broadway stage. If you add the
Also is talking about the Tolkien ensemble.
Yeah.
And she saw them live performing in Helsingør, in the castle, and has listened to them quite a bit. So yeah, which actually makes it sound really good. I mean, that was something I did when last time I reread, or quite recently, beginning of this year, when I reread Lord of the Rings, I made a point of reading all of the poetry and the songs out loud.
Yeah.
I had a flashback to university where I had a poetry course, and the professor said, never read poetry just in your head.
Yeah.
Never.
Oh,
Because written down poetry is written down so that you speak it. Like, you don't get what the poem is until you hear it. Like, just seeing it isn't enough. And I had a flashback to that. And then when I went through rereading Lord of the Rings, I read these things out loud to myself, and it made such a difference. It's a totally different experience, because when you hear it, even if it's your own voice, when you hear it, you start being much more aware of the rhyme and the rhythm of the lines, and that there is in all of these songs, they're very well written actually. And there is a very clear rhythm once you read them out loud, which is harder to notice when you're just eye reading.
Same thing with Shakespeare.
Yeah.
yeah, you hear people say it, and I agree with it. The only way you can really appreciate Shakespeare is watch it be performed.
But also when you read it out loud. I mean, like plays, just like poems, are written down not to be read. They're written down to be performed. But also Shakespeare, like even when he's writing, not specifically writing poetry, his language has such a rhythm to it and a flow to it that it comes out even when totally different when you
there's an audiobook collection on Audible that I'm gonna spend an Audible credit on, which is like, the collected like plays of William Shakespeare, and I don't know how it's like 98 hours. It's one Audible credit, and it's performed by people like Patrick Stewart, Derek Jacobi, and
wow.
Ian McKellen, all of those guys, right?
So good voices. Yeah.
All the voices that should be doing.
Yeah.
Because all of these people have been, Shakespeare actors on stage.
Experienced Shakespeare voices, yeah.
Yes. And it's like all of the plays in like one fell swoop for 98 hours for one credit. I'm like, I'll probably not go through all of that in like one go, but
Danielle says, a few days ago, Chelsea Wolfe, who I don't know, released a short video of herself singing Misty Mountains a cappella, and it is cool.
No, this makes me want to read Lord of the Rings again. So thanks, guys.
Yeah. I mean, that is hopefully sincere. Thanks. Rereading Lord of the Rings again.
No, it's like Game of Thrones. I want to reread it at some point. I don't know when I'm going to do it because there's dozens of other books I want to read. But
also says narrators of Tolkien, Martin Shaw does a fantastic Silmarillion, and of course Christopher Lee does the Children of Hurin.
I agree with Orsa. I do own the Martin Shaw Silmarillion, and of course the Christopher Lee Children of Hurin, which is like Christopher Lee's Children of Hurin is. It's Christopher Lee, and he gives it his all.
He's got such an amazing voice. He's like
the
white
sinister?
James Earl Jones.
How does it not sound like sinister though? That's the thing.
No, he's got like Christopher Lee was an incredible actor. He can do stuff with his voice that does not sound like Saruman, and he's really good at like performing it in like.
He sounded like Saruman because he was playing Saruman.
Yes, that's the point.
Yeah.
The Children of Hurin performance by Christopher Lee is really good. It's incredible.
And he's also apparently quite a Tolkien nerd.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
and has
he was a Tolkien nerd for the longest time.
You actually met him. The only cast member who actually met him, if I recall right.
My favorite Christopher Lee fact is that like Christopher Lee was like a special forces guy during World War II, and during the filming of The Lord of the Rings, he explained to Peter Jackson how it actually feels, sounds, and so forth if you're like behind enemy lines and you're like knife murdering a sentry, because he actually did that during World War II, and he's like, no, look, you're doing it wrong. You're filming it wrong. This is not how that actually works.
Wow. Okay. The guys have life.
That's the thing. Like he was like serious, like special forces, like parachuting into Germany behind enemy lines and killing Nazis and stuff. That goes on to be Saruman, which is cool.
Yeah. Also, maybe a sinister voice is not inappropriate because the Children of Hurin is not exactly a happy-go-lucky story.
I haven't read that one yet, though. I hear it kind of deals with his idea of. I heard it's really dark.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean,
It's
most of it,
heavily
like
inspired. It's
most of
heavily
the
inspired.
Silmarillion is
Yeah.
really dark, to be
Yeah,
honest. I
the
mean,
whole
like the whole,
Silmarillion is brutal dark.
yeah, like the history of Middle Earth is not pretty. It's funny. Like if you only see the movies, you get this idea that elves are these perfect kind of angelic beings who can do anything. They're superheroes. They're fucking idiots. They do the dumbest shit and then kill thousands of each other over it.
Yeah.
Wait, I thought
Wizard
they
with
can't
the
die,
golden
though.
gun.
How does that make sense?
They
no,
don't die naturally, but you can kill them, of course.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I very much appreciate Thornall's Lord of the Rings James Bond crossover joke there.
He is the wizard with the golden gun. Yes. Yeah. He's
I mean-
also released heavy metal albums.
Yes, he has.
What?
Concept albums on
Yeah.
the life of Charlemagne,
Yeah.
and he
The
did
only reason
some
I know is my
singing.
boyfriend made me listen to them.
What an
And he-
interesting dude.
Yeah.
He did some singing and voice acting for some of the Rhapsody, is an Italian heavy metal band, Rhapsody albums. There's a ballad he sings like.
Wow.
He's
okay.
got a great singing voice. Like he had like classical voice.
I can
training. He could
imagine. I can
sing.
imagine. Yeah, he's just one of those like top tier classical voices. Like
Yeah.
I said, James Earl Jones was one. He just died last week, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Makes me very sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was a huge part of my childhood, so
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too.
You know, I
No,
watched his.
he's the bad guy in the Conan movie who was taken from the Cull stories originally.
He's the bad guy in the Star Wars movies.
That too.
Or at least the voice of.
He
And-
turns into a snake in Conan the Barbarian, and it is great.
Yes. Yes.
The thing
It's so
is,
cheesy. I rewatched that earlier this year.
it's awesome.
I was like, I remember that being a classic movie, but I'm starting. It's been a while, so I'm starting to lose details. So I rewatched it, and I was like, oh my god, this is so cheesy. I mean, like in a good way. I love it, but
like Conan the Barbarian, while being like very different from every single Conan story that Howard ever wrote, does still manage to sort of capture sort of the spirit of Conan in an interesting way.
yeah. It's definitely got that sword and sorcery sort of rolling action adventure kind of, and
Yeah,
and Conan's sort of lack of giving a fuck.
Yeah.
You know, it's definitely got
It also has, like,
lots of Conan.
One of the greatest, like, badass, like, fuck with me and find out lines where he's like, "Hey Conan, what is best in life?" And he just fucking lays it down.
That's
Like, damn,
apparently a
dude.
quote that is usually attributed to Genghis Khan.
Yeah.
Like,
And
he's
Terry
gonna fuck
Pratchett,
some
Terry
bitches
Pratchett does
up.
one of the best parodies of that ever in the second Discworld novel in wait, Color of Magic is the first one, Light Fantastic is the second one. I always confuse those two. And they have the same thing because Terry Pratchett has this character called Genghis Cohen, who's the Discworld's oldest hero. Or sometimes he's just Cohen the Barbarian. And they have the same thing. And they're sitting there and they have the whole like, what's the greatest thing in life? And someone says something, you know, the same scene. And then he goes like, what's the best things in life? And Cohen goes like, good dentistry, warm water, and soft lavatory paper.
True.
Yeah, like
Um,
I kind of get it. I would not disagree with him.
Thornall is
read
asking if
some-
anyone has read beyond the Robert E. Howard Conan stories,
I've
like
never read them.
the
I've
Raw
read
stories,
the-
or
I've read some of the comics. I read Jason Aaron's, at least part of Jason Aaron's run, and I've read a little of Kurt Busiek's run, which is some of the best Conan comics.
I've read some of the comics a long time ago, but I haven't read any of the novels. One of my best friends here in Berlin is actually the biggest Conan nerd I've ever even heard of, and there hasn't been anything under the idea of Conan published that he hasn't read. But I am well behind him on that. He actually wrote a large portion of the Conan role-playing game material.
That's awesome.
Because he's just like such a huge Conan nerd.
Which version of the Conan role-playing game though?
The more recent one.
The from the Modifius people.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
He's done freelance bit work for Modifius, and he wrote most of their supplements for Conan, and also worked on the core rulebook, I think.
I used the Mongoose Publishing D20 Conan supplement role playing game for a lot of stuff, which I felt was actually better than I thought it would be.
Right. Yeah, a lot of Mongoose stuff wasn't as good as you hoped it would be.
That one, like, kind of did manage to like take D20 as a rule system and turn it into something that did sort of like the way they handled sorcery. I think was really well done to sort of, reflect the Conan thing, where like being a sorcerer is a bad thing. You don't want to be a sorcerer because it definitely eats your soul.
Yeah, exactly. Like you shouldn't probably have player characters who are sorcerers in a Conan world.
Yeah, I mean they had the rules obviously, but like doing sorcery, at least if you go beyond like just like very simple stuff, will always cost a lot of stuff in game stuff. It's like you can only do this if you sacrifice a human. I'm like, all right,
yeah,
that's the kind of thing that makes sense in the Conan world, but it also very very severely limits sort of like what player characters can do, because sacrificing humans is not necessarily a good thing to do in the game.
No. Colton says someone needs to edit Saruman's spell chanting in Fellowship when he creates a storm before Moria over a metal instrumental. That sounds like something I would expect the internet to have. Like the internet has almost everything, and it feels like something someone would have thought of at some point. Go search YouTube, Colton. It might already exist, and then you can link us to it. Yeah. Also says there's an old meme listing cool achievements by Lee that ended something like Chuck Norris can't top that. Yeah,
I've seen that's the thing. Like Christopher Lee did all these like cool things as Christopher Lee the person, not as like the actor, and that's sort of like the main thing there. But like, I've seen the John C. Hawking thing being out. I am incredibly wary of going with Conan beyond Robert E. Howard, because while I have like a very, very sort of like weird relationship to Robert E. Howard, and I've read a lot of Robert E. Howard, like Conan and Solomon Kane and Cull and Brian McMorran and his whatever the called El Borak, I think, his weird Afghan action adventure stuff and horror stories and stuff. I don't think that most well-balanced, mentally balanced authors are able to sort of get to the point that makes Robert E. Howard Conan stories work. And I've not read the Robert Jordan stuff. It's one of those things where I'm like, I should never even begin to think about touching those books, because they will make me incredibly angry. But like, Conan is the Conan stories by Robert E. Howard work, I think, because you can see that they're written by an incredibly tortured person that is the most incel that ever incelled before incels were invented, and you can read that pain, right? That this is not written by a well-adjusted person, and that's part of like their emotional impact to me. And I don't think that a Robert Jordan or anyone else can sort of like replicate that without also being an incredibly flawed, tortured person. And I don't know if I want to, support that. I'm glad that's in the past in a lot of ways. So I don't know if I want to go and read other people's takes on Conan, because it's so easy to go like, well, he's got big muscles and big swords and he's a barbarian. It's like, no, you're missing the point. This is like a autodidact using his very flawed reading of Nietzsche and turning it into loincloth fantasy. And
Thornall, can you finish that statement? I don't know if it's because English is your second language, but I can guarantee for every single comic book made by Dark Horse Comics featuring Conan is not a complete sentence. You can guarantee what about them? It sounded like you were maybe making an interesting point, but I didn't get it.
So I'm reading some facts about Christopher Lee. And apparently he almost got his finger cut off by Errol Flynn, and he also watched the last guillotine execution when he was 17.
Damn.
I should say,
you can guarantee the quality. Okay, I get it. Yeah, go ahead, Britton.
Yeah.
I agree with Raph, though. I mean, I think Robert E. Howard has a very singular view of the world that can't be replicated.
Yes.
So that's why I generally I also share his wariness of other people doing Conan. Though there are others who've done it well, like some of the people I've talked.
I mean, I looked at the Dark Horse comics and they look really good. Like I get that, you know. But yeah, as I said, like there's like a certain sort of anguish in Robert E. Howard's writing that for me makes Conan, like anything that Howard wrote, like that's kind of the thing that connects to me when I'm like all that toxic masculinity and anguish that is sort of in there kind of connects to me. That's
sure
why I go back to those stories again and again.
It's apparently, I will say, as a complete non-Conan knower, but with a good friend who is like the number one Conan knower I've ever heard of. It's apparently a huge discussion and a religious stance in the Conan fandom, whether you read Robert E. Howard only or everything. And also, it was a huge discussion when they were doing the role-playing game, because you have to decide like what's included. We're doing a game that's going to have lots of world books and supplements.
Yeah.
What are we saying is part of the world, and what are we ignoring?
Yeah.
I think they went with the REH line, that's what they're doing. They're not doing the old comics. They're not doing, because the comics introduced all sorts of world building that wasn't in the original Conan, as far as I understand.
It makes the world more interesting if you stick with the old Robert E. Howard stuff.
Well, it's at least consistent, it all sort of hangs together in some way.
It's considerably like more low fantasy. There's not a lot of like fantastic elements in it, right? And that I think that helps, because a lot of like the later like other people doing Conan stuff, suddenly you have like way too many sorcerers and sorceresses and stuff and magic and shit. And it's like, no, Conan is not that magical. It's mostly people using like, I don't know, violence.
People with thick arms and swords. Yeah. And then every now and then, just to make something really scary. And that was, I think that was more the point. Also, like in Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser, like magic is meant to be horror.
Yes.
When there's magic in a story, it's a half horror story because there's magic in it.
Yeah, that's one. It's like sorcerers are like a different level. You don't fuck with sorcerers, and they up the ante in a way that like big dudes with swords can't do. And and once you take that away and like kind of Dungeons and Dragonsify it in a lot of ways, it kind of loses that very specific character of like sword and sorcery. Like sorceries are bad.
Thornall, keep in mind that Raph can't read the comics, so
I personally I don't know if I would call Robert E. Howard an incel. I mean, I guess I haven't read enough of his letters to find that out, but I think he was a guy who, on the one hand, was he was living in a time that was changing, and he didn't really know how to cope with it, and he was one of those guys, he really wanted to live his life on his own terms, which is my personal theory on why he ended up killing himself. Because, he's like, fuck this. I ain't fucking wasting away like my mom did. I'll just end it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm obviously exaggerating when I call him an incel, because obviously, anachronism and stuff like that. The term didn't exist. But like,
hi, Brian.
When you go and hey, Brian, yes, when you go and read, have you read the book by what's her name, Evelyn Price?
I have
the
not.
One girl that tried to date Robert E. Howard. There's a level of like Robert E. Howard being incapable of like forming like any form of like heterosexual relationships. In any way or form, and I think it's something that you can see when you read those stories, like how he does deal with like women and stuff like that. Like Robert E. Howard is not someone who has any sort of like comfortable relationship to sexuality in any way, shape, or form. That's sort of like my point there. Is like, was he an incel? Obviously not in the modern term of sense of the term, but he certainly had a weird sort of like relationship to any form of sexuality that does inform like the kind of stories he writes.
People, I don't know if you can see it in the corner of my video here, but Fitz is now sitting on my desk very close to me, staring at me and occasionally going, hello, with a paw. It is time to feed her, so I'm going to call it for the evening. Also, I'm a bit tired and I have to work tomorrow. It's a new thing.
Wait, you got a new job?
I didn't get a new job, but I got a gig. I'm freelancing for a friend who is head of product at a startup.
Okay,
and cool. I have interesting things to do again, which is nice.
Interesting is one of the key things there, right?
Well, even just things to do is for people who tend towards depression and have been sitting around for months in their flat by themselves.
Yeah.
Having something to do every day is actually not a bad thing, regardless of what it is. But it's better if it's interesting. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is an interesting challenge. So cool. I'm going to go feed Fitz. It has been a pleasure. Thank you all for joining me on screen. Thank you all for joining in the comments. Thank you all who spoke up for the first time. I think there were a couple of people. I don't know if you were absolutely never been in the pub before, new, but never spoken in the pub, I'm pretty sure. So it's always nice when someone's showing that they're here. I'm always curious who's here. And I know some people lurk and are less talkative and shy in comments, but it's always nice to see that people are actually there and who they are. Yeah.
Before we leave, a book recommendation comes out next week, I think either on Tuesday or on Thursday. The Sapling Cage by Margaret Killjoy, an anarchist transgender YA fantasy novel. And it's really good.
It rings all of your bells.
It does ring all of my bells, but it's clearly it also has a lot of like spear fighting action, which I guess should make the John Gwynne audience happy.
Spear fighting's fun, sure.
So yeah, it comes out on like Tuesday or Thursday. Try check it out because I think it's it does interesting things.
Cool. Transgender anarchist spear fighting sounds great.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody. Have a lovely evening, afternoon, wherever you are. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you in the pub next Sunday.
Have a good night.
Then,
take care, everyone.